What's going on, everybody? Thanks so much for tuning in a little early. I know we usually do the six o'clock Eastern. Every now and then it's going to have to adjust because I've got a few other personal things I had to handle, and Sheets is out today. But we do have his projections and everything up. It's a really interesting slate. There shouldn't be too much crazy chalk. I think you're going to see some chalk a little bit on Boston, Cleveland, and Toronto, with some pieces from Atlanta, but I'm not overly worried about that. And I think the Cubs might have some ownership as well, depending on which position and which site you're playing on. But I do have Toronto as my favorite. But these guys are all pretty close. Toronto, Cleveland, Minnesota, Chicago are all very close for me. And I also really like Seattle. Those are the main stacks for me. I'm going to be mixing in pieces or mini stacks from Atlanta, Boston, Texas, San Francisco, St. Louis, the Giants, and the Dodgers. But those are all all those secondary ones are mini stacks. So the priorities for me are Toronto, Cleveland, Minnesota, Seattle, and Chicago. Everyone else is sort of in the mini stack, and that's my sort of 5-stack thing. I'm playing, a good amount of lineups tonight, so that's what I'm basically doing. Pitching wise, I am spreading out a little bit. I will be. I'm high on Robbie Reyes as everyone else. If it doesn't work out, we know there's always a chance for that. It just seems like there's so much upside. And if there was a matchup, you would say that wasn't very risky, this would be it. Outside of a couple of really bad games against Houston, Robbie Ray has been awesome. And these Angels are terrible. So it's hard not to prioritize Robbie Ray. I will be overweight probably on Verlander and Cease. I think they're going to get a little bit lower owned, and it's a good matchup for Verlander, even though historically Abreu has absolutely owned this guy. So I do have Abreu as a one-off a little bit, and they've had a pretty good, I think it's almost 50 at-bats, 6 home runs, 17 hits, something like that off of 50 at-bats off of Verlander. I don't mind taking a one-off with Abreu, but in general, Verlander has just been really, really good. Even when he struggles, he still ends up being good enough, and the quality starts to keep coming. And I think that it's a good spot to maybe use him a little bit on FanDuel where he's going to be lower owned. The guys who I'm spending down for, I have some. I like Pivetta more than the field for sure. I think there's a lot of upside here, and it's sort of being overlooked against Pittsburgh. And I think Justin Steele and Zach Plesac are the other two that I'm going to be using. And I'll do the double spend ups and the double spend downs quite a bit today. I have a little bit of Cortez, but I'm a little higher on Manoah than Cortez. But those guys are more long shots. The core ones for me are Ray, Plesac, Steele, and Verlander with some Cease. So that's sort of the way I'm going. Let's see. The other, just by positions, highest owned catchers for me they're mostly in stacks, but I do love Contreras if you can afford him. He's really expensive. Kirk and Jonah Heim, I think are, again, fit into my Texas and my Jays stacks. And I think they're fine even separately from that. Kirk Casale, I guess you could use him in your Seattle stacks, assuming that he does play. I'm still waiting for that lineup. First base, Vlad Guerrero is my highest owned player there. I have a lot of wisdom, but you can use him at third as well. He's expensive on DraftKings, not expensive on FanDuel. Should keep the ownership down a little bit on DraftKings. So that's where I'm at with that one. You have Madrigal, who's 2,500 and leading off. Just want to say, I don't think you should be playing this guy as a one-off very much. I might have one lineup out of a bunch that have him there, but he doesn't have any power upside really. And sure, you can steal on Corbin a little bit, but it is always a lot to ask for a guy who's not a great stolen base guy against a guy who's a lefty. But Corbin is not good at holding runners on either. He's the value option, but other than that, Arias, Jimenez, Oro, and Miller, if you like the Cleveland stack. I have Matt Chapman's probably the highest owned third baseman for me, with Jose Ramirez coming in second. I also have a lot of wisdom over there, and Eugenio Suarez. At shortstop, Med Rosario in Cleveland, Bichette in your Blue Jays. He's batting down to 7th in the order. They're sort of mixing around their lineup quite a bit these days because they're not quite getting the production, and they're getting a lot of runners on. They're just not getting the production they need when they need it. I like CJ Abrams as a spend down. I think you can use him in a little mini Washington stack. I don't have a ton of Washington stacks, but like Abrams and Nelson Cruz, a 2-man, like things like that, I think makes sense against Steele in the lineups. You're not playing Steele, of course. Kepler, love his price, love the play on DraftKings, especially Suzuki. Franmil Reyes is going to be the chalkier one because he's only 2,900. Love him. Love Haniger and Julio Rodriguez. Really like Seattle tonight again as one of these teams that I'm going to be filtering in. And then you get the Quan. Oscar Gonzalez stands out price-wise. Victor Robles is cheap. Lane Thomas is cheap. And you can sort of pair some of these guys together because they're on the same teams. Charlie Culberson's in a couple of my full 5-man Texas stacks. And then I threw out one San Francisco and one Dodgers stack, and I don't feel great about either of them, but I'm always willing to take the chance. I think the San Francisco is the one that gets the most overlooked, and maybe I should be playing more hitters from San Francisco more than I want to actually stack them. But getting a nice little 3-4 man feels okay for me against Kelly on this slate. Don't know if you need to get that different, though. All right, let's see what else we got. Kevin Wise in the chat. What's up, my man? Yeah, I don't know what happened in the Angels 9th last night, so I'm totally. It doesn't matter anything to me. I don't think that that means anything to me. If this was a tiny slate, I would say you could argue for the Angels stack because Robbie Ray is volatile, but on this slate, it just feels really wrong to include any Angels today. Pop in some questions, pop in some thoughts on one-offs. That's sort of my little rundown of what I'm doing. Some other favorite one-off. I mentioned Haniger, Acuna, Judge. Adolis Garcia, Max Kepler in the outfield. One-offs. I like Edwin Rivera as a value spend down at third base. The guy's got some pop, and that's good enough for me at 2,500. But I like Eugenio Suarez quite a bit. And Devers is obviously a great play along with the Ramirez Chapman that I already mentioned. Shortstop. Did I say shortstop already? No, I don't think I did. The top one for me, I mean, they're going to be. It's going to be spread out for me. Bichette, Seager, Rosario. As I mentioned, you can use the spend down a little bit in the shortstop for CJ Abrams for Washington. If you're not playing Steele, and Correa a little bit in the stacks. Third base, I mentioned Rivera. I already mentioned third base. Second base, Simeon is the one-off that I probably prefer the most. I like Glaber as well and Wilmer Flores, but Owen Miller and Jimenez are going to eat up a lot of my lineups, along with Simeon. First base, I mentioned Guerrero. You know, I don't know. I'm sort of going double repeating myself here, but I just wanted to see if there's any other one-offs that I'm using. Santana a little bit, Ty France a little bit as a one-off, and then this catcher for who has a little bit of pop for Oakland tonight, who's batting sixth, is only 2K, so I'm using a little bit of him as a value save option. Mostly outside of that, it stacks for me in catchers, with the exception of a little bit of Jonah Heim and a little bit of Wilson Contreras, not William Contreras. All right, pop in any thoughts, questions. 3-3-2 Toronto Braves and Cubs, and it's funny because usually I'm not as big of a on the 13 gamers the mini stacks, but I think this is a slate you could do it with nobody projected to really go off. Now, one team or multiple teams probably will go off. But I think that you can really, really feel good about, getting a 3-3-2 stack and if of the guys you like and doing it today. It's not necessarily going to look like it's optimal in general, but this is the kind of slate where it may be. And you get that, you get the 2 home run game from a guy who I have a lot of my 2-mans with 4 and 5-man stacks on the other side. But like Nelson Cruz is a guy who could hit multiple home runs today. There's a bunch of guys like that today. So I'm with that. Brave second baseman. Sure, if you're stacking the Braves, don't really know. Like you can play Arroyo for 2K and you can play what's his name for Chicago, Madrigal at 2.5. But yeah, if you wanted to go with the low owned guy and who's got some talent, that's fine. I don't generally like one-offs as 7, 8, 9 hitters, but it's fine. I have no real major issue with it, but I think it's not what I'm trying to do. I think that would be mostly saved for Braves stacks for me. And the Braves have a lot of guys you can stack today if you wanted to go that route. They did just light up Walker the last time out. I have a feeling he'll be a little bit better this time. They really got to him early in that game and exploded as they often do. And, it's nice hitting weather in Atlanta again. This is another spot where I think stacking Atlanta certainly makes some sense. Even if you're not maybe getting a mini stack, you could include Grissom in that. Acuna, Grissom, and maybe Darno, then you're getting like a value Atlanta stack, a value Atlanta mini, which is actually kind of interesting. All right. Got some other things about my call at 6. Okay. Let's see. I have to get to that in a second, but yeah, fire on any more questions and any more thoughts. don't really know what else to say about the slate until we get lineups revealed, because we're still waiting. I mean, Boston, this is ridiculous. That game starts in an hour and 20 minutes. Get your lineup out there. This is ridiculous. Same with the Brewers. Get your lineup out there. It's just frustrating. I understand why the Giants, because they're playing late and they're really annoying with trying to get their lineups. But 64 degrees San Francisco, which is like, warm weather for them. So I'm okay with the. I do think that the Giants are the team I'm gonna try and throw into. I have one stack with the Giants, but I might throw a couple more in there just because I could see it happening against Merrill Kelly, who they're very familiar with and have had mixed results in the past. But I would prefer to play Seattle, which we're not going to have that lineup by the time we're done here either. So, one other weird, no, they raised this price. I was going to say, I think Pepio would have been in play on FanDuel again at $6K, but he's $7K now and you just don't need it. But if you really wanted to get weird, there is enough upside for him to have 7Ks or 6Ks in 6 innings or something like that if he really is clean. But it has to be really clean probably because that's just the way it is when you play with the Dodgers. They're too loaded. I don't like Woodruff on DK. You guys can go ahead and take that chance if you want to. There's no problem with playing a low-owned pitcher, but you've got other options that have much Woodruff has a worse matchup than the best strikeout pitcher in baseball in Dylan Cease. So I would rather play Dylan Cease than Woodruff personally. For what it's worth, he has a very limited history against the Dodgers, and there's really nothing to take from it. Dodgers are not an easy team to try and take a pitcher against when you have 26 options to choose from. So I think you're kind of getting a little too creative there. Now, could it work? Sure. You could, if you're playing 20 lineups, can you throw them in one? Yeah, that's about where I would have to be. I would have to throw them in 1 out of 20. Maybe. But why not play Manoah? Why not play? I just don't know how to rate him ahead of the guys around him, given that he's got the worst matchup in baseball against the Dodgers. So no, I'm not a fan of Woodruff in general on the slate, but if he sneaks into one of my lineups, it would only be because I'm playing so many of them today. Not really sure what you're seeing to drive you to Woodruff, other than the fact that he's really good and he's going to be low on, which maybe is enough, but it's not where I would be trying to plant my flag. What is his? It's not like he's been as good lately anyway. And then what is his real maximum upside against the Dodgers? Is sure, he could have a great game. It happens all the time, but I'm certainly not looking to try and target the Dodgers as a team to try and pick on. But if you're playing a ton of lineups, that's really the answer to the question. Depends on how many lineups you're playing. If you're playing a ton, throwing Woodruff into a couple is probably okay. I don't think it's an optimal thing to do in general. It's usually going to be if at the end of the day you complain and you lose because Woodruff only has 5 or 10 fantasy points, you can't complain because you're just taking a terrible play based on the fact that he's going to be low owned. So, and if you're, like I said, if you're going to do that, I just would rather stick with the guys who have better matchups in Verlander, even a better matchup for Cease, obviously a better matchup for Robbie Ray. There's nobody in his price range that I don't think he's got the worst matchup in all of baseball. So if you play Brandon Woodruff today and you play in general, you should probably be playing Brandon Woodruff every day, every slate as your most owned pitcher. That's the only way I would get to him. And for what it's worth, his strikeouts have come way down. Doesn't mean he can't do it against the Dodgers. It's just you're asking for a hell of a lot. Sure, Brady Singer had a good game against the Dodgers. Look what happens. But it's not something I'd be banking on. All right. Any other questions or thoughts before I jump on out of here? Finish my build. I will be in Discord again after about 6:45 Eastern time. One other pitcher I didn't mention that I do have some of is Charlie Morton, so I want to throw that out there. Tough matchup for him as well, but cheaper than Woodruff, and is actually as much as a tough matchup. It's not like the same matchup as facing the Dodgers, who are just at every position you're going to get guys working counts, and maybe Woodruff can even get the strikeouts, but it's going to be harder for him to work deep into the game as much as he usually does, unless he's really getting BABIP on his side. Yeah, that's just my take. And I do like Charlie Morton a little bit for what it's worth. It feels weird to pick on the Mets in general, but I think Morton has enough good stuff to where I would actually consider that. I even threw Sonny Gray into a lineup. I really did spread out my pitching a little bit more than I thought I was going to initially when the day started. I have one Quintana lineup. I have one Jeffrey Springs lineup. I still believe in this kid's talent, and the Yankees have certainly not been anything to be scared of lately. So there's another type of weird one, like a one-off Jeffrey Springs. It's only in one lineup, but I have a Plesac and Springs lineup, and hoping my bats can get it done for me. But I do think Springs has a tremendous amount of upside every time he pitches. It's just a really tough matchup against the Yankees on paper, although lately, if any matchup against the Yankees is a good matchup for the pitcher. All right, guys, I'm going to get out of here unless there's anything else you have any thoughts on, any questions on, any things like that. I'm happy to answer. I'm happy to talk through it with you. I just don't have anything else that I can offer on this slate, at least until we get more lineups released, because I do have a lot of interest, as I mentioned, in Seattle and Boston, and I need to figure out what they have going with those lineups. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. All right. Good luck to everybody out there. I hope we crush it. Just to reiterate, Chicago Cubs, Toronto, Cleveland, Minnesota, Seattle are my main stacks. Atlanta, Boston, Texas are next, with some mixtures of some Yankees, St. Louis, San Francisco, and those are all mini stacks. I do have a couple of Oakland value mini stacks as well. Thank you, Jason, for the nice words, and you guys have a great night, and hopefully we'll see somebody take something down. I'll see you guys in Discord. Good luck, everybody.